Our final speaker is here, Darlington Akogo. He has been named as one of the global 10 most influential people of African descent in healthcare. He is the founder and CEO of Mino Health AI Labs, an AI healthcare company, Kara Agro AI, an AI-powered plant and pest disease detection and precision agriculture platform, and Run Myla AI Institute, an AI and data science training institute. And his talk is going to focus on Moremi AI, a foundation model for biology and healthcare. Please give a round of applause.
Thank you. So, hello everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Actually, there's a whole story behind it that we won't get into, but it took moving heaven and earth to make it happen. So super happy to be here. So we started Moremi AI about 2 years ago. The goal was that, to give it a bit more context, Mino Health AI Labs started 2016, 2017, and we were focused on AI for health. So we built a number of models, right? So we're using deep learning and neural networks. But it was frustrating because you build a bunch of models and you realize there's always more use cases, there's always more diseases, there's always more dimensionality, more modalities in healthcare. So the dream was that would it be possible to ever build a single AI system that would potentially do everything in healthcare and everything in biology? That was the dream. 2 years ago, it seemed very possible. So leveraging the transformer architecture, we could develop a foundation model for healthcare and biology. So that's what led us to Moremi AI. So Moremi AI is essentially a multimodal large language model, right? Which is a whole lot of words stringed together. Essentially, a good way of looking at it is that it's kind of like ChatGPT, but then we built it ourselves. So it's a generative AI platform. But instead of making sure that it's able to, draft emails and stuff like that, we give it a whole lot of healthcare and biology data. So out of it, we got an AI model that we have different versions of it. So we have the one that is purely healthcare, and it does a number of tasks across healthcare. We'll get into that. But also we got a version that is an expert in biology. That's a lot of amazing things in biology. So we got an AI system that could do essentially biology, biochemistry, drug discovery. Within healthcare, it could do a number of things. So you're looking at diagnostics, prescriptions, treatment planning, triage, risk prediction. So we'll just go through a few of the things that we're able to get the AI system to do. We were able to get it to be able to describe molecules. So essentially, you could just give it. The advantage of this being a language model is that language or natural language, human language becomes the interface. So you could just ask it in plain English, French, Greek, whatever the language you choose is. It supports quite a number of languages. You could just give it some molecule and ask it to describe it for you to do that. It could give you the characteristics of it. And then beyond that, it could help you facilitate research. So this is an example, an actual screenshot of what this looks like. So you pass in the compound, you can ask it chemical features of this compound, and then the AI system will do exactly that. The next is looking at protein-protein interaction predictions. So it's able to map cellular pathways, identify therapeutic targets, and even optimize drug design. It's able to do all of this. So you can just pass in, for example, an amino acid sequence, and then ask it to 2 different amino acid sequences and ask it if there's any interaction. And in this use case, okay, I think we'll probably get another slide. So it agrees that yes, there's actually an interaction between them. Oh, we don't have it here. But the next question is what gives confidence about your response to this particular case, which is what makes this interface of language to biology or to healthcare super interesting. In the previous technology or technological attempts to anything within biology and healthcare, you get this one-off solution where you could possibly build an AI model that will predict protein-protein interaction, but it's a one-way thing. It predicts yes or no, so mostly a classification task. But the language interface allows you to then follow it up with a lot of questions, so it becomes more natural. It's almost a human dialogue. So if you ask it to explain why it thinks there's an interaction, it could do that. You could have several conversations. It could go on for 20 questions back and forth, just discussing that one protein-protein interaction. The next thing has to do with molecule generation. So the AI system is able to do everything from textual descriptions. It's able to give you specified criteria, then help with drug discovery too as well. So, for example, in this use case, we passed in, so we gave it a description and asked it what is the molecule for that, and it was able to come up with a molecule and then give you explanation of why that is the molecule. So it does exactly that. Then also the property prediction. So it's able to, even if it generates a novel compound and you ask it to come up with some in silico measurement for this, it could do this by itself. So you could check for things like the solubility, reactivity, toxicity, acidity. So for example, this is what are the chemical properties of this compound and its potential function. So it's going to pick up the compound, tell you the formula, the weight, the Small's representation, the appearance, solubility, purity, all of that in one go. So it can help you identify targets. It can help you understand the mechanisms of how this drug interacts with the targets. It can help you to optimize the designs for the drug in itself too as well. Then there's a cool use case. So, one of the things I actually find super fascinating about Moremi AI and this approach that we took is that even we don't know the full limit of all that it can do. So what usually happens is that we are interacting with some biologist or some biolab, and then they present us with a use case and we go try it and we see that, oh damn, like actually can do that, which is super surprising. As a matter of fact, the idea of it being able to generate compounds is not something we directly trained it to do. We did not do that. We fed it a whole lot of like healthcare bio data, but we did not purposely train it to be able to help generate this. So to our surprise, it was able to do it, which was super shocking. But this proves a theory that if you sort of compile a whole lot of data and you feed it to an AI system, you get a system that actually exceeds your expectation. It's almost like, I'm not a physicist, but I'm kind of, at least, an enthusiast. So in physics, they are looking for the fundamental theory of everything, right? You want this one thing that sort of captures the whole physical laws of the universe. Essentially, the same thing happens with AI systems, which is that instead of building AI models and picking singular use cases, if you can bring in a whole pool of data, you find out that there's actually a pattern that connects everything together. And it's not always very clear when you look at it in the isolated use cases. So I'm sure, take for example, an oncologist or let's say a radiologist that is looking at mammograms in the hospitals might not necessarily see their work strongly connected to someone that is, designing antibodies for malaria. But essentially with AI models, nothing necessarily stops them from seeing some pattern that is over there. And one other thing that we realized from building this is coming to the conclusion that essentially all of knowledge, all of science, any field is just data analysis. It's just pattern recognition. You get some pool of data and you try to find a pattern in, and that pattern can be the discovery, or it could be an invention. Even that is still pattern recognition. New treatment, are you finding some pattern across some pool of data? And if that is the case, we human beings are phenomenal, but the reality is that there's a limit to how much dimension of data we could operate within. If you take human beings and you take computational tools, at least the old kind, that increases it to, let's say, a factor of about a few hundreds of dimensions. The good thing about foundational models, because you're looking at models that have billions of parameters, they are very, very good at operating across several folds of dimensions. And so the potential there is that they could see patterns that we could not. And so the mere fact that we saw a pool of data, because we know all the data we fed to the AI system, but none of it purposely was for designing drugs, but some way, somehow, across those patterns, I was able to pick up that as what they call an emergent capability, proves that there's a lot of patterns that we might not just be aware of. So that was a slight interesting thing that we found. So this was also another use case that we came across. The success rate of designing therapeutics is pretty low, right? Like it takes what? I think about 12 years and can cost up to $6 billion to make a single drug. And you usually will start with several tens of thousands of candidates, and then out of it probably end up with just a single one. That's terrible success rate. It implies that we do not have a firm grasp of the patterns across the data. So in this use case, for example, we thought, is it possible to ask an AI system if given a certain compound, or broadly let's just say therapeutic candidates, can it predict the likelihood that it will make it past the preclinical trial, and then explain why it thinks it can make it past that? And we actually were able to see it do that. So starting from this, we asked it to generate a possible smile representing a compound that could be useful for breast cancer therapy, and it did that. Then the next question was predict why. Oh, this is not the most updated, sorry. But yes, you can actually ask the AI system to explain it, go into a whole lot of details as to why it thinks it could make it past the preclinical trial. And the way to validate this is actually simple. So just take any approved drug that was approved beyond the pool of data that you actually use to train the AI system, and then see what are the chances of the AI system predicting that and the justifications that it offers. Yeah, so beyond preclinical trial, you could also do it for clinical trial too as well. So the good thing, again, with language as an interface is, since the focus of this is explainable AI, the AI system can actually explain its reasons, its decision making, which is different from at least the older versions, like your classification models and stuff like that. They usually would just say 0 or 1, or if it's multi-class, it's choosing between some class or some regression, it gives you some numbers. The good thing here is that with a language model, you could ask it to explain its rationale and it to do that. Even though so this is me probably countering the very theme of the conference, so apologies in advance. But I think explainable AI is impressive, it's amazing, but there's one angle to it that we should look at. So if you take humans, right, we assume that human beings are explainable, interpretable, but in reality, are we really explainable and interpretable? So first of all, let's say interpretable implies that you understand the underlying mechanism of why some entity does what it does. Okay. Do we understand fully how the human brain works? No. So then we are not fully interpretable. Explainable implies that each decision this entity does, it could justify it. But I think most of neuroscientists would confirm and tell you that human beings, what we do is post-rationalize our decisions. We don't actually explain why we do stuff. Because we have common sense, we also have social skills. So if you ask why do you do that, I'll give you the best reason that does not make you remove me out of the social circle, right? And so language models also, there's at least some research that shows that they don't always explain things to match their actual reasoning. So there's this whole technique in large language models called chain of thought. And if you act, so this is, like going through a bunch of reasoning steps to come to some conclusion. The reality is that some studies have shown that if you ask an AI system and it goes through this chain of thought, its reasoning path, and it comes to an answer, when you ask it why does it come to an answer, it doesn't always tell you everything it went through its chain of thought. It's sort of obscure certain information, which makes them the perfect predecessors to at least Homo sapiens, because that's exactly what we do to as well. So explainable, it depends on what the objective is. At least you want an AI system to give you some sort of rationale as to why it made certain decisions, try to defend it. And in at least current use cases of AI systems, you want human beings to supervise the AI system. So if the justification does not make sense to whoever is supervising it, they could reject it. But it doesn't necessarily mean that that is why the AI system chose that decision. It might just be coming up with post-rationalizations that it believes would convince you. So on the medical side, one of the first things we did was we essentially gave our AI system medical exam questions. The MMLU medical aspect to it's a popular benchmark. So we gave the AI system, it actually scored, so there's different ranges. There's professional medicine, anatomy, biology. Sorry about that. Can you still hear me as I'm trying to fix? Okay. So essentially, there's these different domains. We give it to the AI system. The performance usually ranges from 70 all the way to 92 across the different categories within MMLU. So these are some of the questions that you find within the MMLU. What substitutes are available for Crystal, and then, so which is a medication, and then it's able to answer that. Can you describe any potential side effect that users of Crystal might encounter? And then the AI system explains that some of this side effect might involve nausea, taste change, diarrhea, upset stomach, weakness, and the list goes on. Then what does it use as a remedy for? It explains that. Another use case that we've been very impressed by, so some of the use cases, this is also the other thing. It's not always what the AI system itself does. It is sometimes the layer you put on top of it. So in this use case, the AI system was able to write medical report. Yes, that was not, we trained it to do that and it did that. But one thing we did was that we built a software layer on top of it. So what happens is a lot of times when people integrate AI solutions into clinical workflows, they sit outside of the clinical workflow. So ideally, if a radiologist wants to write a medical report and the AI system works something like the way we have here, they would have to see the text and still have to type everything again in some reports. But over here, the AI system actually drafts a report. So it's going to type out a bunch of things, and then the radiologist has the option to edit them. So they can take out, add a bunch of stuff, and then they can download. So that sits much more within the clinical workflow. It's much more integrated. So this is one of the use cases we've been very much fascinated by, and we support several modalities. So X-ray, mammograms, even dermatological images, microscopy, and the list goes on and on. I think we probably support somewhere around maybe 15 different imaging modalities out of this, and then we are still expanding them. So in line with that, even talking about things that we didn't know fully the AI system could do, we've been doing radiology as part of the work we do for quite some time now. So I know, quite a bit about radiology. I'm not a medical doctor, I'm a technologist. So we told the radiologists that, the AI system could do X-ray, mammograms, ultrasound, all of this. Then we visited a facility one day, and we saw there was this interesting looking image. So we asked them what is that, and they said that is an HSG. It's a specialized X-ray. So then they asked us, did you train your AI system? Maybe someday, so they said maybe someday you could train your AI system to be able to support that as well. And we said, well, why don't you just give it a try? So they passed in the image and asked what is wrong with the patient. Just the question, what is wrong with the patient? And the AI system was able to pick up exactly what the radiologist had in the report. And they're like, oh, wow. So the fascinating thing about this always goes back to the fact that you don't fully know all that it knows until someone presents some problem, some use case, and then you keep finding out the stuff that it does. But the other exciting thing is that you can be as detailed in the query or as vague as you want. It allows room for that sort of broad range, free form queries. So if you take, for example, the question that asked to generate compound for breast cancer therapy, that's kind of open-ended, very, very much open-ended. Right now we are doing an implementation where we are designing antibodies for malaria, and we have very, very specific targets that we are going for. And so the same AI system, this time we gave it very specific targets, and then we've even taken it a step further. So now we've defined a sweet spot across certain metrics. So everything from foldability to melting temperature, we give it a certain range and we're asking it to generate within those ranges. And it's still able to do a number of them. You can also make it to be able to optimize the generation based on the results. So there's this cool, when I prepared this slide, so many things actually has happened since then. I'll share one. We decided that, it's one thing to generate some sequence for some therapeutics, right? Even on the computational side, there's still a bunch of things that should be done. What if we made our AI system an agentic biology researcher? So make it so that it could do a bunch of those processes all by itself. So we tried it and we actually pulled it off. So we created a new version of it where essentially you could just give it a certain target and we'll do everything from generating it, coming up with all the properties, then we'll actually do all the in silico validations, take the result, refine it, and keep this process ongoing, which it was kind of pretty cool to see it working. And now we have like different ideas of how to expand it. But fundamentally, the goal will be to keep expanding this till you have an automated researcher, one that you could just say, cure me cancer, and then it'll be like, give me 6 months, I'll be back. Or maybe you get to a point where it doesn't even need 6 months, it just needs a couple of days, and it goes through thousands of experiments, because the thing is that you can, with computing, you can parallelize things, right? So it doesn't have to be one AI system working. It could spin off thousands of AI systems all working in chain and sharing data across, and you could get the result. So as impressive as some of the things we've done, it's still just the early phase of this. But of course, foundation models are not perfect. They have issues too as well. One thing is, if you run the same query several times, you're bound to get different response a number of times. So how do you deal with that? Those are some of the things. And especially healthcare being a super sensitive field, you don't want to create the impression that these AI systems are 100% perfect. So some of the limitations we've identified, we make it very clear to clinicians. As much as it could do X-rays, mammograms, ultrasound, it's actually quite terrible if you ask it to look at brain MRIs to pick up something like stroke. If you give it, if it's a tumor, it's actually good at picking up tumors, but it's bad at picking up stroke. So communicating those limitations to clinicians also gives them at least the balanced view that look at this as a co-pilot, as an assistant. That does a number of things, but you should always supervise it. And if you disagree, go with your end and not what the AI system says. Because AI systems, sometimes they will do amazing things and they'll make some of the dumbest mistakes you could imagine. And we've seen, so for cancer detection, for example, sometimes there could be just a tiny calcification in a mammogram, the AI system could pick it up. And sometimes there could be this huge, obvious mass that even me as a non-radiologist, non-oncologist, I can see. The AI system would be like, nope, there's nothing there. Which also brings another idea on the theory of foundation models or the theory of AI systems. People use those instances to claim that, see, AI systems are dumb and they should not be trusted. There's actually a current benchmark, I think it's called ACK benchmark, very, very simple task, where even a 5-year-old could solve them. And almost all the powerful AI systems perform poorly on it. I do not think that implies that AI systems are dumb. I'll share my theory. This is just my theory. My theory is that in, let's say, the search space of intelligence, right? There's different configurations of intelligence. We only know of one that is really impressive, which is human. I mean, there are animals and their intelligence at least bears some slight resemblance to ours, right? And so we assume that there has to be only one type of intelligence. We haven't discovered any alien lives yet, but if we did, we might find out that there's different possible configurations of intelligence within the search space of intelligence. What that means is that in a certain specific point of that, in a specific configuration of that, they would have certain strengths and certain weaknesses. So human beings, we have certain strength. There are certain things that our brain is able to do very easily. Then there are certain things that we are terrible at. Optical illusions are limitations of our configurations, and that's just one. There are certain biases. The fact that as humans we think linearly is very difficult for us to process exponential. Even if you study exponential data a whole lot and you see them every day in your daily life, it's still very difficult to imagine that you could start from 1 and then just by increments in a couple of days you would have a really high exponential number. It's very difficult for us to imagine this. And we saw this with COVID too as well. That's one of the issues, because essentially people kept thinking linearly, oh, it's just 10 cases, it's just 50 cases. They couldn't see the exponential growth that was coming. So those are all known limitations of our intelligence. But within the search space of intelligence, it's possible to have other forms, and they might not necessarily have those weaknesses, but our strength, they might also not have. So my argument is that foundation models, I don't think at this point anyone can deny that they do possess intelligence. I'm not claiming that they are living, thinking, conscious entities. That's not the subject matter of this conference. The whole argument is that they are definitely a form of intelligence because they've exhibited that across several use cases, but they would definitely have certain limitations that we humans might not have. And that's totally fine. We still need to leverage them. To connect all that point back is to make the key statement that I am not of the belief that we need to wait for foundation models, large language models to be as humanly, or they should match human performance across tasks before we use them. Because as it stands now, they have superhuman performance on certain tasks, and then they have below human performance on certain tasks. And so we just have to combine it, add it to our arsenal of tools and leverage it. We don't have to wait for this sweet spot where it matches human performance before we use it. Regardless of the use case, if it is medical, we can still use it, but we need to put in safety guardrails, which is super, super important. So once you put in the safety guardrails, then at least you've come to the point where we can tap into the benefits of foundation models, but also keep at bay the dangers that comes with it.